Well, howdy, folks, and welcome to the Wacky World Drive-In. I'm your host, the Dollar Store Dean Martin, and with me, as always, my co-host, the high watermark of blogging, Dick Vincent.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, we are back, and it's good to be back. I think we got an interesting episode today, something maybe a little different, but I think it's going to be pretty cool.
Different, random, and it'll be a little all over the place.
Well, that's people should expect that from us now.
That's true. That is true. So before we get started, I wanted to ask you, I saw a news article the other day that there's actually a new form of physical media coming soon. Have you heard about this?
No.
Yeah, it's being developed by a music producer by the name of T-Bone Burnett, and it's a new form of music playing. Basically, it's a combination of CD and vinyl record.
Wow. That sounds kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's supposed to be, according to this article, the first innovation in analog recording in 70 years.
Wow. So I take it's going to be something you play like a vinyl record, but it doesn't have the wear issues and the noise issues that a vinyl might get.
Exactly. It's supposed to be the best possible sound, and it looks like either a giant CD or a metal vinyl record.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're going to be called hold on, I got the article right here. The Iconic Originals is the name of the line.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I like T-Bone Burnett. He does a lot of like the roots music stuff. I know he was like the musical producer for Oh Brother Where Art Thou when he worked on like with the Alison Krauss and Robert Plant stuff and everything. So that should be interesting.
Yeah, it did not list a price. So I'm thinking it's going to be kind of a pricey piece of media.
Yeah, I kind of look maybe at this as maybe kind of a niche thing.
Yeah, what it sounded like is, if you know, in record production, they make those master records, the heavier ones made to duplicate.
Yeah.
It's kind of sounded like those, but just to be sold to the general public.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, it's something else they can, hopefully, if it gets big, they can make us buy music all over again now, just like they did with CDs.
Speaking of records, I actually read the other day, too, that one of the first new vinyl processing plants have opened up in order to meet this new demand for vinyl records.
Yeah, the whole vinyl thing is amazing. I mean, I held on to the majority of my vinyl, and I still buy vinyl. And I'm one of the people that actually has a record player and a stereo system, a turntable, so I can play my vinyl.
Very
and
nice.
It's just amazing. I mean, I used to be able to go to the flea markets and the used bookstores that had records and pick up records for $2, $3, and $4. And now it's, they've kind of gotten expensive, but it's good, anything to keep music and a physical media alive. And if we go back to vinyl, that's great as far as I'm concerned. And it's great too, all the beautiful like soundtracks we're getting now and stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was at Walmart today, as a matter of fact, not a CD in sight, but they had a healthy little vinyl section, almost as big as the DVD section.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I was in Barnes and Noble a while back, and they were actually, their CD racks, they were actually taking the dividers out to make them bigger so they could fit vinyl in those racks, which is like, 30 years ago or whatever, they were, putting dividers in to make the vinyl
for CDs. Yeah. You
Yeah.
mentioned the price, and vinyl records are a bit pricey, but they do seem to put a lot into them these days, like nice packaging and booklets, and you're getting some bang for your buck there in a lot of cases.
And plus the record itself, it's a nice heavy piece of vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, because back in the days when vinyl was the only option for music, you would get some vinyl, but they would just be, I mean, you could practically hold it in your hand and it would, like, you could wave it and you could see the thing move.
Yeah.
It would be like flapping.
I remember different times when, for vinyl giveaways, for example, there was a McDonald's one, and if I remember correctly, there was an Alf one. But I remember the McDonald's one, if I'm not mistaken, came in the newspaper, like in the sell ads, and it was just a very flimsy little, almost paper thin record you could listen to.
Yeah, well, I remember when they used to give you records when I was a kid. You could get records on the back of cereal boxes.
Wow. Okay.
I remember getting, like, I think a Paul Revere and the Raiders record. You could cut it out from the back of the cereal box and play it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I guess, too, what's also coming back, kind of a little side thing is there's a cassettes.
I've heard that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, what I read once was that a lot of indie bands look at cassettes as something because of the vinyl. You know, it's so hard to get your records pressed because of the vinyl shortages and the record plants, that a lot of indie bands are kind of looking at cassettes as a way to get their music out there cheaply.
And vinyl's just expensive to make on your own. There are print on demand companies now for vinyl, which really surprised me, but they're quite pricey. And it's one of those things where you don't get a discount. You've got to pay the same $36 that everyone else is paying for your record. So it's not really a cost, not good for cost.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. 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 But I do. I mean, I've bought them I mostly just buy soundtracks and stuff as far as a new vinyl, but yeah, it's great. Like I said, anytime we can keep physical media out there, whether it be music or film or whatever, it's a great thing.
With the advent of new physical media, do you think there's anything in store for, say, like Blu-ray and that kind of technology? Do you, after this 4K thing, do you think it's just these Ks are going to keep going up?
I think they'll just increasing I guess it's the resolution or something. I don't do 4K yet, so.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah. And it kind of, I mean, I understand these companies, places like Vinegar Syndrome and things like that. I mean, I give them all the love and credit in the world for putting out what they put out. But, with the 4K stuff, it's kind of like, you're paying $40-50 for a disc that I can't even use along with a Blu-ray disc. But, if that's how they make money, I'm not complaining because they need to stay in business.
I actually realized, kind of put two and two together. I do have a 4K player because I have a PlayStation 5, but I don't have the TV to go along with it.
Yeah, yeah. The one thing I kind of every so often I hate myself for not getting is 3D.
Oh, right.
Yeah, just because they're putting out like so many older 3D movies now, and I buy them just because to watch the restored flat version. But it'd be nice to be able to see, like House of Wax or It Came from Outer Space or things like that in 3D.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
I wonder too with this stuff, is there certain things that I just don't know if they warrant a 4K release? I think they're just putting some of this stuff out just simply to dig into the collector's pockets, because there's certain older movies that there's just not that far they can go with the quality, I don't think.
Oh, yeah. I think there's even an argument to be made for a lot of that on Blu-ray.
I agree. Because there's certain cases where I'll have films that the Blu-ray looks worse than the DVD.
Yeah. And I give these companies credit. I mean, they know their market. I mean, you can take a movie that's not the greatest and you can put it in a standard Blu-ray case and throw it out there, and you're probably lucky to sell a few hundred copies. But you put it in a fancy slipcover, and people are going to buy it, which again, if that's what these companies are doing to keep the money coming in, more power to them.
Yeah, and people, they love those slipcovers too.
I mean, I'm more about the movie itself, and I do like the little booklets because I like reading stuff, essays and stuff, but I'm not a slipcover and packaging guy for the most part.
Yeah, I really, as far as the slipcovers go, and I think Vinegar Syndrome is a perfect example. You get those editions with the slipcover, it's like what, $3-4 more for a slipcover? Like, I don't need that slipcover. I'd rather have the $3 or $4.
Yeah, and back when Scream Factory and Shout Factory was putting just tons of stuff out back in like maybe 15 years ago or so, all that stuff with the slipcovers, I just took my slipcovers off and threw them in a box. And a couple of years ago, I started selling those things on eBay. And I could sell a slipcover for something like Sleepaway Camp. Right. And turn around, and that would give me enough money to buy a whole new Blu-ray. I was getting like 20, 25, even $30, sometimes just for slipcovers.
Wow. That is impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, people love the slipcovers. I mean, I don't dislike them. If something comes with one and it's included, great, but I'm not going to go out of my way for one. And I used to have the problem with CDs with slipcovers. Is back then I had CD towers. It was before I got CD shelves. and slipcovers don't fit in CD towers. So I would always have to take the CDs out of the slipcover anyway, just throw them in the bottom and in
Oh,
the thicker section of the tower.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I've also never been big into digipacks. I have friends that just love digipacks, but again, now that I have CD shelves, they're fine, don't bother me at all. But back then, when I was just doing CD towers, you cannot get most digipacks to fit into a CD tower.
Yeah, and I don't like digipacks. Just I don't like them for. They were doing them on DVDs for a while. Then it's just, I mean, they get like squished, and they do that thing where they kind of fold up on themselves and you can't see the spine. And I think I'd rather have something in a hard case.
I would as well.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, and this is something I looked at again the other day because I did some rearranging of my DVDs. I do not own a single snapper case DVD. I don't know how I've managed to get past that all these years, but I don't own a single one.
Oh wow, I've still got probably a bunch of them left in my collection. I think when Image first started doing stuff, they did snapper cases. And I want to say some of the old Something Weird stuff was in snapper cases.
To me, that is the worst possible way to put out a DVD is those snapper cases.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes I will, like if I see them cheap somewhere, I'll buy replacement Blu-ray cases just because I hate like those echo cases, they call them, with the holes cut in them.
Oh, right.
Just
Yeah.
because they're so flimsy and there's no support to them or anything, which I guess it's a cheap way to make them because it's a lot less plastic you have to use.
So that's actually something I've never seen in the wild. So they do sell replacement Blu-ray cases.
Yeah, you can. There's a place called Casetopia, and you could buy them. I mean, I think I pay like a nickel, 10 cents a piece for them if you
Oh,
bought them. Yeah, they're fairly cheap, and you can buy them. A lot of times they're out, but if you're into different colors, you can even buy like black and red
hmm.
ones and things like that if you want to switch colors.
Funny you mention that because I've had a PlayStation 3 for a long time. So I actually had the Blu-ray player technically for quite a while, but I was real hesitant with Blu-rays. And it took me a long time to start buying Blu-rays because of one, I didn't know if they were going to make it. Because there's always that chance of that new physical media not making it.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. But yeah, I'm speaking as a guy who bought Laserdisc. I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
But then the other thing, and I mean, this is a very stupid a complaint, but I'll admit I'm openly stupid about it, is I just do not care for the blue of the packaging. I so much prefer when Blu-rays have either the clear cases or just a different color, but just like the everything in blue. Aesthetically, I don't care as much for that.
I do like the clear. I think Vinegar Syndrome puts all theirs in clear. I,
Criterion does clear as well.
Criterion. I don't know if you're familiar with a company called Mondo Macabro. When they first do their initial run, it's like a limited edition, a couple thousand. They put them in red cases.
Oh, that sounds cool. I
And
have
I
some
think those
video
look
games in
really
red.
nice. Yeah, I think that's what they are, is video game cases maybe. But I think those look, and they're nice, they're nice and heavy.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, Blu-ray, blue case, but it's just odd to me that it caught on and kept, because I mean, they're totally different size cases. So it's not like people are going to be confused. Oh, is this a DVD? No, it's obviously not a DVD. So it's just weird that that blue has still kind of hung in there for all this time.
Yeah, I think it helps a lot that they got the price down, because that's one of the problems with laser discs is, I mean, there was laser discs that, I mean, you paid $120 for
Oh,
some of the
wow.
big multi-disc sets, and they never
Mhm.
really got them below $20, $25. I mean, but you can buy Blu-rays if you watch sales for $5 and $10.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. And I
So
think
with
too, the rise of the collector kind of, the physical media collector thing and collecting all the cult movies and stuff was helped with Blu-ray too.
so speaking of Laserdisc, did they ever get to the point where you did not have to flip the disc?
There was expensive players near the end that I think basically had two Laserdisc readers, one on the top and one on the bottom. That when the top, like you put the disc in, it would read one side that automatically start reading the other side. I never had one, but there was those available at the end.
Hmm. So how long did Laserdisc play before you had to flip it? Like what was kind of the time limit there?
They had two different types. I think there was one called CAV and one called CLV. One of them was only 30 minutes aside, and the other one was only an hour.
Okay.
Supposedly, the ones that went like the 30 minutes, I think those supposedly had better quality. And you were also able to, like, if it was kind of neat, because say you were watching something like King Kong or a Ray Harryhausen movie, they had the technology where you could actually step frame by frame.
Oh, okay.
So you could see like the stop motion stuff move and everything. And it was kind of cool. But you had to flip the disc every 30 minutes.
Yeah. So from your experience with the laser discs, were the stops in pretty good places or were they sometimes just completely in the middle of a scene?
They, I think, tried to do them as best they could, like, when something would end or something like that. So sometimes it wouldn't exactly be 30. You'd get like maybe a 27 or something or like that. But they tried their best. And I never really found it obtrusive because it was kind of like back then. I mean, that was the first time you ever got things, like, because they could do the other audio tracks. We could get things like commentaries and things like that. And it was just something, it's like, wow, this is such, and they were such quality wise a step up from VHS and beta
Yeah,
at
and
the
I
time.
at the time too, the whole concept of a commentary kind of blew my mind. I was like, wow, this is really unique.
Yeah, I remember the first one I got because it was a place that used to rent them, and I went down and rented King Kong, and the original Criterion King Kong had a Ray Harryhausen commentary.
Hmm.
And I go, that's the end. You hear Ray Harryhausen talk about King Kong. It was something, yeah, it was something so cool.
Wow. I didn't know if he was around long enough to do something like that.
Yeah, this one probably would have been in the early 90s or something. And he died in what?
Oh, I don't even know.
Yeah, but he was, yeah. There's even some of his I think DVDs out there, or maybe even they were transferred from old Laserdisc. But he did some other commentaries on I think his films at some point.
I never collected the laser discs myself, but I would always thumb through them at the stores because I always liked that big packaging, big nice cover, and all that stuff. And I always wanted some. I even debated buying some without a player, but just never got around to it. But I
Yeah,
remember in those scenes, people would always talk about Japan. It seemed like Japan always got the best laser disc for some reason.
and their packaging was always so beautiful and stuff. But that's one of the things why I liked them is because they were, like it was like a record album with something nice and big. And it was cool because I used to take them to conventions and stuff, and it was neat. Those were neat things to get signed.
So, with this resurgence of physical media, with the vinyl records and even the cassettes, do you think we can expect a new laser disc to be printed anytime soon?
I don't think that technology is coming back. Just it's probably the cost to do it. And I think, I mean, there is a case to be made, I think, a lot of times for vinyl sounding better than CDs, depending on how the CD is mastered. But for like, I don't think there's ever going to be a case for making Laserdisc better than DVDs or Blu-rays. And I think, the VHS is mostly it's a nostalgia thing, why people still buy that. But I don't think there's ever going to be a big nostalgia for Laserdisc.
All right. So, I guess we'll actually get to the topic of the episode or the first topic of the episode. And this was actually one you inspired me to do because you had done tweeted a tweet several weeks ago, a month ago, maybe, mentioning an actress. I don't remember who it was, but you'd said something to the effect of in your alternate history or your alternate timeline, she had gone on to do so and so, so and so. And that
Oh,
really,
yeah.
and that really got me thinking. I was like, that is a great idea because I do that all the time, just kind of daydream about what ifs. And so
Oh,
that's
that's
one.
interesting. Yeah, she's actually one of the people I'm going to mention on my list. So that's cool.
Okay, well, why don't we start there? Where it all began.
Okay. There's an actress named Jacqueline Lane. She did a whole bunch of TV. She did an Elvis movie, Tickle Me. She did a really good AIP, one of my favorite biker movies called Hell's Bells.
Mhm.
And she did a Spanish Western, I believe, called Land Raiders, which she was born in, I believe, Austria. And she came over here and started working. And she always had this real kind of, I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but she had this kind of almost exotic European look about her. Then she pretty much stopped working in the early 70s. I think she married like a rich duke or something in Europe. But I always thought she just had the perfect presence and looks and everything to go over to Italy and start making giallos.
And let's take this further, this alternate history, and let's say she had gotten certain roles over other actresses. What particular films would you have liked to have seen her in?
Oh, wow. See, that's hard because so many of the giallo actresses I love in their roles.
Well, this is an alternate
Um,
history, alternate
yeah.
reality. So you still can have your version from this reality. You can just somehow reach over and take that version as well.
Oh, okay. Well, I would love to have seen her in a Muck with Rosalba Neri and Barbara Boucher in the Barbara Boucher role.
I've seen the trailer for that one a bunch of times, but I've never actually seen the film
That's
itself.
worth checking out. That's one of my favorite. I mean, it's can be argued it's not a true giallo, but a lot of people categorize that. And I would love her to, see her in that, and maybe also some of the maybe the Sergio Martino ones that he did with Edwige Finch. Even though I
Hmm.
love Edwige Finch and all those, it might, I kind of like it'd be interesting to see what she would have done in those. But yeah.
All right. All right. Well, my first one is it's a music related one. And I'm a big Elvis fan. I think most folks know that. And I think most Elvis fans can kind of attribute the point where everything went wrong or the things that went wrong can all come down to Colonel Parker. And so in my alternate reality, this is actually going to take two paths. But in mine, Elvis finally had enough and he saw what Parker was doing to him and kicked Parker to the curb. And so Elvis was able to go on with his career as he wanted to. And so in my first Elvis alternate reality, he would have gone on to say Italy and done a bunch of spaghetti westerns because he was a big western fan and he wanted to do more serious westerns. But again, Parker wouldn't let him.
Yeah, and he did that one that was kind of a pseudo spaghetti western, the one where he didn't sing.
Charo,
Charo? Yeah,
Charo.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
pretty good one too. And I think that shows the potential he had.
Yeah. And he actually, when you read about him, there's some real interesting stuff out there about him as film roles. Like I've read that he was originally approached to do Midnight Cowboy in the
Wow.
John Voight role,
Interesting.
and Parker put a kibosh on that. Then I think too, he was in the talk for the Glenn Campbell role in Two Grit.
Yeah, I think I've heard that as well.
Yeah, but man, you pick see Elvis and Midnight Cowboy, man,
Or True Grit,
or True
even.
Grit. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Then yeah, but he's one of those guys that there was so much potential there.
and I think he was just the way he spoke, his mannerisms. I mean, he was just made for a man with no name type role. And in this alternate reality, he would have gotten that. He would have been Blondie. He would have been Joe. He would have been Blond. He would have been the man with no name in the
Yeah,
Sergio Leone pictures.
well, he looks great in that Charo movie. I mean, he's got like the beard stubble, and he's kind of got the sweaty, unclean look. And yeah, he would have been great.
Yeah, I could really see that. And then my second path Elvis would have taken is he would have kind of, without Parker's influence, gone more the Johnny Cash route. Like I could have really seen him doing more like outlaw country and things of that nature. Gone a little bit more underground, not really the big Vegas and show tunes and that people associate with later Elvis, but again, a more Johnny Cash-esque persona and music.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I know too, like Johnny Cash, Elvis, he loved gospel music.
Right,
So I
right.
could definitely, I mean, even though he did do a lot of gospel, I could see him really getting, into the like, you know, primitive kind of music, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, like I could really just have this image in my mind of like him just kind of sitting on a stool on a stage, dressed in black and playing an acoustic guitar.
Yeah. Like, kind of like in the Comeback special.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even more kind of underground, so to speak, like in just a little dirty honky tonk type club.
Yeah, it would have been interesting if you talking Johnny Cash to see him, later in his career do like Johnny Cash did with the Rick Rubin records. Because, you look at Elvis, I mean, going back a bit to we were discussing his movies, I mean, he could act his ass off when he wanted to.
He could. He really
I mean,
could.
you watch him in the early stuff like Jailhouse Rock and stuff. I mean, he just like, kind of propels himself off the screen on those things.
And I think he would still be alive today or not be in hiding today if not for Colonel Parker.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Did you see there's the movie coming out?
Yeah, I'm always really hesitant about those because I heard that Tom Hanks was playing Colonel Parker. And I don't know about that because that seems to me like maybe they're going to sugarcoat Parker's role because I just can't imagine Tom Hanks playing a creep, even though I'm sure he could. He's a great actor, but I just don't know if they would have him do that. So I'm just worried it's going to be a real sugar-coated Parker kind of portrayal.
I saw the trailer for it when I went and saw a few weeks ago, and I'm not sure, but the guy who plays Elvis looks really good.
Okay.
I can't think of his name offhand. And that would be interesting to see what they do with this. Colonel Parker going to be the
bad guy.
Yeah, because that's the thing you always hear about, because, why didn't Elvis ever tour Japan? I mean, why didn't Elvis ever go to England? I mean, he was huge over there. And they say that all because Colonel Parker had that shifty background and he didn't want to get involved in the passport stuff and go back to Europe because it was some stuff there he wanted to keep on the lowdown. And yeah, because that's, why did Elvis go to England?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your next one?
Mine is kind of, actually my next two are maybe tied together a bit, but to start off with, I mean, I know it's probably you are and a lot of people listening. I'm a huge Christopher Lee fan.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
And then this is something I thought of a long time ago with him is James Bond.
Wow.
You read the James Bond books. I've read some of them and they're a lot kind of darker. They do have humor in them, but he's kind of more of a badass in the books. I mean, he kills people. Then I just kind of think I'm not saying Christopher Lee do the whole, like, maybe like you put him in like Dr. No in that era, the early 60s and From Russia with Love. I just would love to see what he would do with Bond.
Well, Christopher Lee, I think, kind of got typecasted in a lot of people's minds because of Dracula, because of the Mummy, because of Saruman, things like that. Just kind of a villainous character, or even Count Dooku. But he played a good character just as well, in my opinion, as he did a villain.
He did. And I think with the Bond thing, he would have brought a little bit of, not like horror, but just he would have made it maybe a little darker.
A little darker and a much more intimidating Bond. Because a lot of the Bonds aren't very intimidating per se. They're more suave, but I think his would have been a suave intimidation.
Yeah, then he, did all that stuff in World War II. He was in the undercover stuff and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think he would have been an interesting James Bond, at least for the first few years.
Yeah, I heard an anecdote when they were making Lord of the Rings. I believe it's the scene where Brad Dourif's character gets killed and falls off the tower, and he's stabbed or something, if I remember correctly. And Christopher Lee was like, "That's not what it sounds like when a person is stabbed."
Yeah,
because he knew.
Yeah. He evidently did all that stuff in the war.
Because we've kind of touched on a little bit the Sherlock Holmes films, I think in the last one or at some point. And in that first, the Sherlock Holmes, The Hound of the Baskervilles with Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee was the co-lead, and he wasn't even slightly villainous in that one. And he did a really good job.
Yeah. He always, I love the roles where Christopher Lee is kind of just allowed to, show up with his little mustache and his suit,
Right.
and just kind of be Christopher Lee without having to. I mean, I love, Frankenstein and Dracula and his makeup roles, but he can just be really kind of just Christopher Lee.
Okay, Horror Express is another good example.
Yeah, that's a really cool role.
Yeah, it's really vague in the beginning which side he's actually on. You just don't know.
Yeah. Well, look at him in Gremlins.
Oh, yeah, of course.
No,
Yeah.
Gremlins 2, I guess.
Gremlins 2, the scientist.
Yeah,
Right,
where he's
right.
a scientist, he picks up the rabies. I have rabies already, and throws the vial down. Yeah.
And shows that he had a knack for comedy as well that he rarely got to show off.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So then what, you said this was a two-part, or it leads into your next one. What is your next one?
Why don't you go? Let's alternate, maybe.
Okay, well, this is, wow, kind of comes together really nicely. I did a review recently here on the channel for The Scarlet Claw, the Sherlock Holmes film. And in it, I mentioned how it really feels like a Universal monster movie. It's got the look, it's got the vibe, it's got that tone. It's just missing a Universal monster. And I said you could have just thrown Frankenstein in there and easily it had Sherlock Holmes meets Frankenstein. And people really latched on and liked that idea. And it kind of really got me thinking about it, about kind of had Universal done that and mixed Sherlock Holmes, the Basil Rathbone one, into the Universal monster films, or at least a crossover film or two.
None. That would have been interesting because they were both in the same kind of time frame, early Edwardian England, maybe, and stuff like that.
So it would have been really cool to see Sherlock, the Basil version, go up against Frankenstein.
Yeah, especially since Basil was the son of Frankenstein.
Wow, he sure was, wasn't he?
Yeah, but that would have been cool. You have all the black and white sets and everything, but those first two, I think there's that and Hound of the Baskerville are really good.
Yeah, the first two is Hound of the Baskerville, and I think it's The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes is the second one.
Yes, yeah.
And I had a commenter who had mentioned about how Sherlock would have approached the different monsters he was going up against. And that got me really thinking too, like, how would he have viewed Dr. Frankenstein and what he was doing? How would he have viewed the monster itself? How would he have viewed Dracula? How would he have viewed the Wolfman?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think he would go about it with his very analytical sense. For Dracula, for example, I think he would have looked for a cure first and foremost.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I don't think Sherlock would have seen things like, oh, this is something supernatural. This is something mystical. I think he would have gone about it more as okay, there's a rational scientific explanation for this, and I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And plus, you have to wonder what would they do with the Nigel Bruce Dr. Watson? Would you keep him as kind of a light comedy thing, or?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Because really, a lot of those movies has some of the best scenes. And I think that slight bit of humor to the very straight, somber performance of Basil, I think it's just a great pairing. And I think that's kind of what makes them so great is their dynamic, their chemistry.
Yeah, it works really well. And I know a lot of the the serious Holmes scholars do not like him because he's kind of this comedy bumbling guy. But I think, like you said, that helps balance out that I think they have just such great chemistry together. That
you're right with the balancing out, because, okay, let's say Sherlock is all on it and all Sherlockish, and then Dr. Watson is all, let's say, on it and all intelligent and all that stuff as well. I mean, granted, he's intelligent, but let's say he's very just on it. Then it would just basically be two straight men.
That's true. Yeah.
You just wouldn't have that dynamic of, because for a good straight man to really work, you need the kind of the funnier sidekick or whatever to balance it out, to really put into perspective how straight and serious they are.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think for a movie, especially, you do need that. Whereupon in the books, you don't really need that.
Right, right. So have you read any of the books?
I have like a big thing I bought on a sale table somewhere that has all the stories in it. And I've read The Hound of the Baskerville and some of the short stories. And I mean, they're good.
I was curious if they ever actually did delve into supernatural or vaguely supernatural elements.
Not that I know of. Like I said, I haven't read that many because, the Hound of the Baskerville, there's like, it's a spoiler alert. It turns out that there's a logical, explanation to it. But yeah, I'm not sure if they ever did or not.
And in my last piece of the alternate timeline, and I know this one, the timeline does not match up at all. This is just complete dreaming, but I would have loved to have seen a crossover film with the Basil Sherlock meets the Peter Cushing Frankenstein. And I would like to see those two go head to head and kind of battle it out in a battle of wits, so to speak.
Oh, that would be interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
And as I said, the timeline does not match up at all there. We're talking probably a 20-year difference, if not more, but I would love to see that if I could just make that happen.
Yeah, though that would be cool. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'd love to see Peter Cushing and Basil Rathbone together. That would have been cool.
But then again, I'd like to see Peter Cushing with everyone that I like. So it's kind of goes without saying.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. Getting back just a quick story real quick that I heard somewhere. There was that documentary that came out, I believe back in the 90s on Hammer. Then it was narrated by Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. Then the guy that got them together in the studio to do the recording, they hadn't seen each other in years. And I think it turned out before Cushing died, it was the last time they were together.
Okay.
And evidently, when they used to make Hammer movies, they used to go in between breaks. They would go to the movies together. And they were both huge Warner Brother cartoons fans.
Wow.
And this guy that made this documentary relates a story where Christopher Lee bought these presents into Peter Cushing of little finger puppets of the Warner Brothers, like the Bugs Bunny and the Coyote, Roadrunner, Foghorn Leghorn, and brought them in and gave them to Peter Cushing. And Peter Cushing was like, oh, these are wonderful. And the guy said before the actual recording started, they sat there at their table with these finger puppets acting out Warner Brothers cartoons.
Talk about something that I wish had been recorded.
I know. Yeah. They would put them on and do like the Roadrunner and the Coyote sketches and fall off the table and everything. And yeah, that's just an amazing story.
Wow. And I would love to hear those two imitating some of those characters.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So what's your next one?
My next one is kind of another Bond one. And again, it ties into some people in European cinema. A person that we mentioned briefly before, who I'm a big fan of, is Edwige Finch.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have loved to see her as a Bond girl.
Wow, she definitely has that look. I mean,
I don't want her to be like one of the Bond girls that just kind of is there for Bond to save. I love On Her Majesty's Secret Service is one of my favorite Bond movies. And I think Diana Rigg is fantastic in that movie. I mean, she's a badass in that movie. And I would love to see Edwige Finch in her On Her Majesty's Secret Service with George Lazenby. Because that's actually a Bond. I mean, you can't really call her a Bond girl. I almost look upon her as a co-star of the movie.
Right.
Yeah. So I would love to see that.
Yeah, Edwige, she really, I think, could have done a whole lot. I don't know how much English she spoke. That might have been the issue. Did she speak English or?
Well, I think up till Jill St. John in Diamonds Are Forever, she was the first American Bond, call them Bond girl. But I think everybody else before that was dubbed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I could see Edwige too in different things. The Sinbad movies, for example. I could see her in both those later ones.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because she has, the kind of exotic, look to her. Yeah. She would have been cool in those.
And I'm not a project in particular, but an alternate reality thing I wish would have happened was I would have loved some kind of movie starring both Edwige and Ornella Muti. Like, I would have loved some kind of collaboration between those two.
Yeah, they would have been a great pair. Ooh, yeah. That's something I'm thinking about.
Yeah. So my next one is another thing I came across in my research recently, but John Boorman, who did the Excalibur film from the 80s, before he did Excalibur, he wanted to make a Lord of the Rings film. And he was trying really hard to get Lord of the Rings made, even had a script and everything. but he just in the end couldn't get the rights, so ended up doing Excalibur instead.
Oh,
But
I didn't know that.
I would love to go to that alternate reality and pick out that his version of Lord of the Rings and check it out, because it sounds different.
So did he have a cast in mind for it, or is this something you're going to come up with?
Oh, I hadn't even got that far. I just would like to see
Okay.
whatever he ended up doing. Like
that would have been interesting. Yeah. Well, there's all those kind of film projects that were kind of, oh man, why didn't that happen?
For example, and I mentioned this in the video, there in that script, that screenplay, there's a love scene between Frodo and Galadriel.
Really?
I want to know how that came about, how that would be shot. Like everything about that fascinates me.
Yeah. And you kind of wonder if that was something he put in there to show the studio. Oh, look, it's a love story.
Yeah, I guess so. But you mentioned the casting, and that is a good question. I wonder if it would have been a lot of the people from Excalibur. Like, could we have expected a young Patrick Stewart in some role in the film?
Yeah, when you think about it, all the people in that, like Helen Mirren and Nigel Williamson, you could see all those people transitioning over to the Lord of the Rings roles.
Like, I wonder, the guy who played Merlin, would he have had him play Gandalf or Saruman? I mean, there's so much potential there.
Yeah, I think, is that Nicole?
Yeah, is it Nicole Williams? Yeah,
yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I watched that just about a month or so ago.
That's one that shockingly I had never seen until a couple months ago. A buddy of mine, Jay Super Awesome's like, you got to see this, and sent me a copy. But I'd never seen it before.
It's a really good movie. And it's one of those movies that, I mean, I first saw it when it came out and thought, oh, I love this movie. And it's a movie that it holds up really well.
Funny thing about it, like I said, I'd never seen it before, but that image of Nicole as Merlin with that metal headpiece, that headpiece thing he wears,
yeah,
that is so iconic. I still, when I think of Merlins, I associate just the Merlin character with that headpiece, even though I'd never seen the movie. I just know that image so well.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he was a good Merlin. But yeah, that's an interesting idea, though.
It's something that I think would have definitely been way out in left field, but I think it would have been kind of a wonderful left field.
Yeah, so I wonder if he was planning on just doing like the first book, or was he going to do all three books and try and condense them? Or I wonder how that was going to work.
From my understanding, it was a condensing kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I know too, one of my favorite kind of what if movies is after, I believe, Black Sabbath, AIP approached Mario Bava about doing the Dunwich Horror.
Oh, that's interesting.
And Boris Karloff was going to play Wizard Whately, and Christopher Lee was going to play Armitage, the professor. And something fell through. They wanted Bava to come to America to shoot it, and he refused to do that, and it just kind of fell through. Then a few years later, AIP did make the Dunwich Horror, but it was something completely different. But I would have loved to see Bava do that.
Oh, yeah, especially with that cast you mentioned.
Yeah. So that's kind of one of those what ifs that's out there.
And I wonder if it would have been a case, too, where it would have been a little closer to the source material, because I do like that Dunwich Horror, the one with, what's his, Dean Stockwell?
Yeah, Sandra D, yeah.
It's a little off in left field. I would have been curious if they had done one that was actually a little closer, even though back then they rarely, everything was off in left field, it seems like.
Yeah, I would still love to see I like, a lot of the Lovecraft like adaptations, like the Reanimators and stuff, but I'd love to see someone just do a Lovecraft. That's, you just wonder if it's ever going to happen with the, Guillermo del Toro is a Mountains of Madness is one of his dream projects.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember at one point they were fighting him on it, saying that no one would want to watch a period piece. It's like just how clueless these studios are.
Yeah, then I know the big thing too is he said it has to be R-rated.
Right.
And I think, yeah, so I don't know, that may still happen someday, but
I don't know. That story, is there anything really, any R-rated content in the Mountains of Madness anyway?
There's stuff in there implied. I know there's a lot of stuff when you read the book. There's a lot of implied things like cannibalism. Because I'm not sure. Are you familiar with the story?
Oh yeah, definitely.
This is like, again, big time spoilers for no one who's read it. But when they guys go out to that camp, and the camp turns out being destroyed, and then they go out and find the destroyed camp and discover all of it. If you read there, it's implied that the whatever the like the Yug Sluggus or whatever they were there took the people there and did everything to them that the people were like, as far as dissections and dissections. And I think there's even talk of cannibalism, that they ate them and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of dark stuff in there.
That is true, but I think a proper filmmaker could make that film in a PG-13 version, and it would be quite good.
You could do any Lovecraft in PG-13, I think.
Yeah, because that's the thing about Lovecraft. It's what you don't see for in most cases. That's what's scary.
Yeah, and that could have been something that he maybe was, how directors always say, oh, I'm going to do an R-rated movie, and they say, well, we're not going to let you do it unless you do PG-13, and they'll say, okay, I'll do PG-13. It's kind of like they throw it out there to kind of, as a negotiating point. I mean, I don't know this. That's just something I'm, spitballing.
Right. So here's one that is it's not on my list or anything like that, just something that just kind of hit me last minute. And one that more of just a curiosity, a question. So originally, you've seen Once Upon a Time in the West, correct?
Oh, yeah.
So from what I understand, the role of harmonica was originally meant for Clint Eastwood, and Clint didn't take it.
Oh, really?
So I wonder, had he taken that role, would harmonica have had a bigger part in the film and more of a presence? I mean, as great as Charles Bronson is in that movie, it's rather small, all things considered.
Yeah, probably. And I love Clint. I have a really hard time picturing him in that role.
I could see it would take some slight, I don't know if it's even rewrites, just a slight difference in how the character is portrayed, but I think I can see it.
Yeah, and something else I've also read was that, because of all of, Sergio Leone's movies, they had such a long gestation period, especially the later ones. That's why he only made his handful of movies. But at some point in Once Upon a Time in the West, the three guys at the beginning, Jack Elam and the two other guys that are at the train station that Bronson shoots, he originally wanted them to be Clint Eastwood, Lee Van Cleef, and Eli Wallach.
Wow.
To kind of do this little cameo and then get shot. Okay, this is the end of the dollar films. Now I'm going to do this.
Wow, that would have made some people angry, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad he didn't go with that. I mean, that's funny, but I'm glad he didn't go that route.
Yeah. But I love Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah, I was actually on a spaghetti Western kick here recently and picked up a few cheap from Amazon, and that was one of them.
Yeah, Henry Fonda in that movie, because I saw that in the theater. And then I remember Henry Fonda, again, another spoiler, when he shoots that family.
Right.
And they say, something, what about the kid, Frank? And he says, told him my name, didn't you? And to see Henry Fonda kill that little kid, that was just like, oh my God.
I'm really not familiar with his work other than that film. So that's the Henry Fonda I know for the most part is that movie.
He's pretty much, he did do some more darker, but he's pretty much kind of the all-American everyman, kind of thing. I mean, that would have probably been comparable to Tom Hanks walking up and shooting a child in a Western.
Gotcha. Okay. But yeah, I'm going to tell you something that I've told a couple of people in private recently, but I'm going to make it public. And this is a controversial opinion, but after watching that movie, because I saw it once a long time ago, and I liked it a lot, but it didn't, I wouldn't say it didn't stick with me, but I just didn't remember much about it. But here watching again recently, I think Jason Robards, he really was kind of the standout for me. He kind of stole the show.
He did, because he's kind of got, when he shows up, you don't really know. Yeah, he's really good at it. He's kind of one of those things in the movie when he's not in the movie, you keep waiting for him to come back in the movie.
That is exactly how I was feeling about it. I mean, I liked everyone. They were all good, but I just was like, okay, where's Jason Robards? And that scene where he's on top of the train, that is good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And his whole kind of scene when they're in that real dark bar kind of place, where I think it's his first entrance in.
Mm-hmm.
He is amazing in that movie.
Yeah, really good. Here's a question then. Jumping, I guess we're talking spaghetti westerns again. If someone, say, had never seen a spaghetti western, what is the first film, the one you would say, this is the one you need to start with?
Well, the obvious ones would be, the Leones. Maybe the first, like for a few dollars more, a fistful of dollars. There's also the Big Gun Down, the one with Lee Van Cleef.
I've heard such good things about that one. And there's even a nice Blu-ray pack that comes with the soundtrack that I've had my eye on for years now. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it.
The Grindhouse one, that's a really good one. And one that that really enjoy that doesn't get a whole lot of love, I think, is the Sergio Corbucci's with Burt Reynolds, Navajo Joe.
That is a good one. I remember seeing that on TV years back. Yeah.
Yeah, and it does have one of my favorite Morricone scores. But yeah, I enjoy that one too.
Yeah, I was thinking about that myself because I guess I would go, if someone was just brand new to the genre, I guess I would just start with Fistful of Dollars. As good as Once Upon a Time in the West is, that's actually the one I would probably have them watch toward the end, like just kind of feel where the spaghetti western genre kind of culminated.
Yes, and I do think there is some really great spaghetti westerns out there, but like you just mentioned, if I was going to tell someone, you need to watch this, but watch these other ones before this. Like there's one called The Great Silence.
I don't know that one.
Which is really good with, it's got Klaus Kinski in it, and what's his name? Jean-Paul, what's his name? Turing. Anyways, it's a really good one. All takes place in this snowbound, like mountain town and everything. But yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, I almost picked up the Sabata trilogy recently. I remember those being pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't seen those probably since like the VHS days, but those are supposed to be good. Those are probably due for a rewatch at some point.
With the Sabata trilogy, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it the first and third films are Lee Van Cleef, and then the second film is Yul Brynner, right?
Right, I believe so. Yeah,
that's odd that they would bring Lee Van Cleef back in at the end.
He was so busy at those points; he may have been doing something during the middle one. Yeah. Also, another good one is the first Django with Franco Nero.
Right. Yeah, that is a good one.
That might be a good starting off one too.
I tell you, I picked up a DVD set at Walmart here recently, and I've looked online and they don't have it on their site. It's not on Amazon. There aren't any copies on eBay. I only saw it in store at Walmart, and it's a 4-pack of DVDs, and it has Westworld, Soylent Green, The Omega Man, and Logan's Run.
Oh, wow.
And it's $10 for all 4. And they're individual discs too. It's not all the movies slammed onto one DVD. It's each individual disc. And it's one of those ones you can tell that they just took the actual released versions and threw them in the pack because there's no uniformity to the discs.
Wow.
Like one's mirrored, one's a picture disc, one just has text on it.
They had a bunch of extra stock in a warehouse, and they probably like a Walmart exclusive or something. They just threw them a Walmart here, we'll give you a great deal on this. Yeah, but that's a great package, though.
It is a great package. Yeah, I've already watched the Westworld. I mean, I've seen all the movies before, but I watched the Westworld during my spaghetti Western kick, even though it's not technically a spaghetti Western at all, but definitely a great Western, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. So it was Westworld, Soylent Green, and Logan's Run. What was the fourth one?
Omega Man.
Omega Man. So you got 2 Chuck Hestons.
So yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I love his Omega Man.
Yeah, I saw that one for the first time this past October. And that was one I never really wanted to give a shot to because I like Last Man on Earth so much. But when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is great. And it's so different that it doesn't take away, or it doesn't feel like I'm watching a remake.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's a totally different type of feel for the movie. And the book is actually more like the Vincent Price version.
I mentioned this when I talked about Omega Man on a recent episode. It, even though it came out in the early 70s, it is one of the most 70s movies I've ever seen. It's like they saw into the future. It's like, okay, so this is what 78 is going to look like. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Man, I
And I
haven't
mean
seen
that in a
that in
very
years.
good way. Very good way, but great movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And speaking of the 70s, my last one I have on the list, and that's the, I'm sure you've seen it. It's been floating around for years now. The screen test of Kurt Russell, always coming back to Kurt,
Oh, I almost did this one.
and William Catt for the Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah. And also Terry
Terry
Nunn
Terry Nunn, yeah.
as Princess Leia. Yeah, yeah.
I
That
mean,
was the kind of one I thought, well, I'm going to do this, but I bet you Rob's going to
yeah,
bring it up.
you got
Yeah,
me. Yeah,
yeah. He would have been a great Han Solo.
I agree 100%. I mean, again, it's Kurt Russell. It's my favorite actor. So, of course, I would have preferred him in the role. But it makes me wonder, had he done that, where would his career have gone?
Yeah, would we got all the Carpenter stuff? Would we have like Kurt, an Escape from New York and that kind of stuff? Because I mean, Han Solo, it's almost like they wrote that for him. I mean, it's got the cocky guy, and the kind of, with the grin and stuff, and yeah.
See, I'm not thinking so because, as if anyone listening doesn't know, Kurt was a child actor and he did a lot
Yes.
of Disney films and stuff like that. He was on an episode of Lost in Space, even.
Yeah,
But
he did an Elvis movie.
oh, did he?
Yeah, he was in that happened at the World's Fair. He's that little kid at the beginning that kicks Elvis.
Fantastic, considering where his career would go. But so he did those Disney movies and he was kind of in a career slump. And then he hooked up with Carpenter, and wasn't Elvis their first collaboration, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, that's right.
And he did Elvis, and that's kind of was the beginning of his comeback, showing that he was more than just a child star. But it took him a little while to pull out of that. And it was that collaboration with Carpenter, from Elvis to Escape from New York, The Thing, all that stuff that kind of cemented
Oh,
Kurt.
yeah.
So I'm wondering, had he done Star Wars, would he have done Elvis? Would he have even needed to do Elvis? I don't think so. And had he not done
Probably not.
Elvis,
Yeah.
I don't think he would have gone on to work with Carpenter so many times.
Oh, that's probably true. Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of Elvis, what year did that come out?
The World's Fair.
The Elvis, the film.
Oh, that was. Oh man, 70. Oh, late 70s.
I'm thinking so. So it might have even been the same year as. Let me check real quick. I want you to sing a little song for the viewers while I'm looking.
One thing I read an interview with Kurt once, and he talked about, working with Elvis on the Elvis movie. And then Kurt's father was Bing Russell, who was a huge cowboy character actor.
Right. Yes.
And then he said that Elvis came up to him during the making of the movie and said, want you to know that I always thought your dad wore his hat, the coolest of any cowboy actor I'd ever seen. And whenever I do a Western, I always wear my hat, just like your dad did.
Interesting. Do you happen to know what that particular way was?
No, I guess it's just the way maybe it was tilted or something like that. But Kurt said Elvis told him, I always thought your dad wore his cowboy hat the best.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So Elvis was 79.
Oh, okay.
What year was Star Wars?
77.
77, right. Yeah. So I think had he done Star Wars, he probably would not have done Elvis, and that would have just changed his career trajectory.
Yeah. And plus, would he have gone on, to do Raiders? Would he have been Indiana Jones?
Oh, interesting point. And that's all the time we have for this one. You got anything else for us?
No, just want to thank everyone again for listening. Hope everyone's doing good and imagining some cool movies that you would like to have done.